What is up, everybody? I'm KNULL here with your afternoon snap, and today we still have Vormir as the featured location, so I wanted to try playing some Deadpool and some KNULL. Getting some additional ways to kill Deadpool is always sweet, and some additional ways to grow your KNULL while your opponent is also forced to grow it with you obviously is pretty cool. So I don't think that this deck is perfect. For instance, we should probably be playing Forge instead of Hulkbuster, just as a little bit easier to make that work with Vormir. However, I wanted to still take a look at some fun games that I was able to play the past 2 days with this list, and this one is super fun. We're going to see Lamentis-1 as one of our locations, which means we're going to have an absolutely massive KNULL here, of course. So where do we go from here? Well, we've got multiple ways to kill our Deadpool still, including that Vormir, as well as Killmonger, Venom, and Deathlock. So a lot of different options with this one. I'm going to wind up throwing everything into Vormir, the idea being that first we'll blow up the Deadpool, and then next turn we could drop like Deadpool plus Venom in the location, and Nova will explode before the Deadpool does. So we'll get some additional stats on everything that way, and obviously all of this is setting up for a huge KNULL as well. Miniaturized Lab is locked down currently, but we can still kill the cards in there with Killmonger, but figure the longer I save that, the more surprising that is going to be for my opponent, and the more value we can get out of it in that way. I have noticed a little bit of lag in Vormir, similar to Warrior Falls on occasion, so that is going to be the case here. Let me know if you guys are experiencing the same thing. Maybe I should delete and re-download the app or something, but my opponent's gonna snap, I snap right back. No time wasted. Let's go for it, baby. They're playing a Patriot deck. I mean, that was pretty obvious by the turn 1 Misty Knight, and on turn 4 they are snapping because they are feeling confident dropping down a Khazar. But wait a minute, we've got Killmonger, so I don't think that the Khazar is super long for this world, and we're definitely going to be able to get them with that. But I also want to be able to play my huge KNULL, so I want to Killmonger this turn, and this might be a little bit of a mistake, but I figured this still doesn't give my opponent that much time to recuperate their board. The other thing that I will say is that I go for Deadpool, then Killmonger, thinking, okay, it doesn't matter because we're getting the power into the KNULL, even if we destroy the Deadpool. And partially this is like a hedge around magic or something maybe as well, but ultimately I think this is a mistake because we don't need more power on KNULL, right? What we actually want is potentially a little bit more power into Vormir, because wherever we drop KNULL, it's going to be able to win that lane. So pretty sure we'll be good on Lamentis-1, but my opponent does surprise me a little bit in this game. I thought we just had it in the bag with that Killmonger activation, but they have Ultron, so they're going to be able to repopulate everything we just destroyed. But lucky for us, 4 times 4 is just short of beating us in Vormir, so we are going to be able to take this one. I will say one thing that is a little bit awkward with this deck: sometimes with Vormir, you just don't have the time to actually make use of all of your destroy effects. It's like too much of a good thing, but in this game we are going to have the time, and that's in part due to Project Pegasus giving us 5 extra energy this turn. That's going to allow us to destroy Deadpool here on turn 3, which we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. The curve was a little bit awkward. Now, my opponent is going to snap as well. They're curving out nicely with Project Pegasus. They had Psylocke, so they were already planning on doing some ramp a little bit, and they actually have a really, really good turn 3 that is definitely worthy of snapping. And then after thinking about it a little bit, I'm gonna go Deadpool, then Killmonger, and then the Demon, and then hang on to Venom. Reason for this is if I play Venom first, then I'd still have the Demon and the Killmonger in my hand, which could just be a little bit awkward. But like I said, great turn 3 for my opponent. Negative into Vormir, plus a Sarah to make their cards cheaper the rest of the game. So they are definitely getting their value here out of Project Pegasus. And this is partially what I'm also talking about when I say that, like, Vormir's a little bit awkward. I would love to play Deadpool plus Vormir, or I'm sorry, Deadpool plus Venom or Deadpool plus Carnage this turn, but I'd also like to make use of Vormir, but in doing so, then I just have this other destroy effect that I wouldn't be making use of because I would kill my Deadpool with Vormir. So that just, makes things a little bit awkward in terms of curving out with this deck in general, and means that like I should probably just play Deadpool plus Venom into Project Pegasus, despite that maybe not being as exciting. But that's what we're gonna go for here, and we'll see what my opponent's answer to that is. And like I said, sometimes you don't get to use Vormir, and in this game we're also not going to be using Vormir because my opponent is going to be changing that into Limbo with Magic. So yeah, a little bit awkward, but this will give us the time. So this is actually a pretty good thing because now it's going to give us the time to play KNULL into Taskmaster, which is a pretty nice combo, one that we looked at on Monday? That was Monday, following the Nidavellir featured location. So there's definitely some other cool things that you can do with this deck that might need a little bit more help, and maybe you'd want to play like Magic and Negative along with some of these cards too, just to give you the time to be able to play all of this sweet stuff. Could definitely be a route to take it. I'm going to drop that 22 power KNULL into Limbo, and my opponent is going to go for a Blue Marvel, so they're not trailing us by too much. And this is tricky because my opponent played a Mr. Negative on turn 3, and now they've had 4 draws after that. They're probably going to be able to make some really big numbers and challenge us in Project Pegasus and Limbo. So I'm gonna think about my options here. We've got a Deadpool for 8, a Death for 12, and a Taskmaster for 22. So we can add a lot of power to the board, 42 power on the board in this final turn. We just got to figure out the most appropriate way that can potentially still win us some lanes yet. And I decide that I think we should be battling for one of these two locations, Project Pegasus or Limbo, and add a bunch of power there. And I decided to go for Project Pegasus because they've got less power there, which means it'll be less power when they double it. And they do indeed go for an Iron Man over in Project Pegasus. That location's going to be really close. They also double themselves over in Limbo with a Mystique on their Iron Man. And what do they have for us in Necrosha? Hopefully not something to beat 14, but it's going to be close as the Ironheart gets to throw some triggers into Project Pegasus, bringing them up to 49. So one more trigger into Project Pegasus for +4, and they would have won that location. But a really, really sweet game where we were basically able to beat the full combo out of a negative Serra list. So yeah, 42 power on the final turn was definitely needed. And speaking of crazy final turns, we're going to take a look at one more game. We've got Sanctum Sanctorum as location number 1, and right now I'm basically trying to guess where I think Vormir might show up at. And I'm going to hope that it shows up as location number 3, though it's actually not going to show up at all. But I'm still playing as if it might, and that is why I throw Nova into Vibranium Mines. This is a little bit awkward. I don't actually want the Vibranium, but the idea here is that if Vormir is location number 3, then I'll be able to throw the Hulkbuster onto Deadpool, and then it will immediately destroy itself, returning to our hand and doubling as a 10 power Deadpool. So that is the potential plan. Doesn't wind up working out. We get Nidavellir, which is still a ton of fun with this deck, as we've seen in the past. So we can make Nidavellir work as well. And on turn 4, I draw a Vibranium. Well, that's 1 cost for 9 power if we throw it into Nidavellir, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the game actually gets a little bit buggy here. We Deathlock, destroying our Deadpool, and this should be a 5 power card that returns to our hand and doubles up to 10. Instead, it stayed at 5, and this was either like a bug with the hood, or something else weird going on, but this was supposed to double when we destroyed it. So what I'm hoping is that this is just a visual glitch, and that if I play it and then destroy it again, it will still double again. So I'm gonna take my chances because it's just too sweet to play with Nidavellir when you've got a Venom. So I'm gonna go Deadpool plus Venom into Nidavellir, and we're gonna see if this one works here, fingers crossed, but I will show you, it was just a visual bug. That Deadpool is going to revert back up to 10 when it comes into play for some weird reason, as my opponent plays this Black Panther here, but that'll go up to 15 with Nidavellir, and then Venom can munch on the Deathlock and the Deadpool, and the Deadpool is actually at 10, and then will double up to 20 for the final turn. So this is great, and now we've got a bunch of power that we can dump on the final turn. We've got Taskmaster, which will copy Venom's 31, and then we've got Deadpool for 20. So this is 50 power on the final turn, 51 power even, or more if we play some into Nidavellir. And that definitely beats the record that we had last game by just a little bit. We can go up to 56, or we could go up to 61. And here's the thing. This game, if my opponent doesn't do anything silly, is just going to come down to differential. I might lose a lane, my opponent might lose a lane, doesn't matter. We don't have to try to win both lanes, we just have to try to put the most power as possible onto the board. So that definitely incentivizes taking back this Deadpool and actually just throwing it down to Nidavellir. But there is one other way that this game can end. Maybe not by differential, but maybe by my opponent using an Arnim Zola on their Black Panther. But if they do, we're beating them in the Vibranium mines with Nova, and now we are also beating them in Nidavellir since we added so much power to that location on this final turn. So really, really sweet when I thought that we were able to beat a Black Panther there with over 100 power in Nidavellir. But for today, that is going to be it. So thank you guys very much for watching. I'm No Luck's Given. Peace.